All right, guys, we're going to do a QA video real quick. Someone's working on this knife and they're curious about how to work with the blade edge. And we'll get to that at some point in this video. But I already kind of explained it to them and they came up with this kind of topology here. And they were curious if they needed to start this over or if they could just save this model. So we're going to talk about how to save it. Now, there's a number of things going wrong in this Blender scene already. And as you're a beginner, you're going to probably tweak settings and adjust things and kind of geek things up a little bit, perhaps in your scene. So you can see we got some banding effects going on, and I'm going to fix a few things real quick because there's a number of them going on. First up, this banding is caused by two things, actually, the cavity settings and also the view itself. So I'm going to press N, go to view, and you'll see that there's a clip start and clip end. I'm going to right click and reset these real quick, and already looks better. And the cavity itself right here, we could do both, of course, that's fine. I'm going to reset valley so it's not super dark. Ridge is misleading when modeling. It works really well with sculpting, but I wouldn't necessarily turn it on when actually modeling. It gives the impression that you have more rounded or beveled edges than you actually do. So just go ahead and turn it off for now, and we'll be done with that. So another thing going on here is that wireframe is how I toggle wireframes on and off. You can right click the checkbox and add it to a shortcut. I use my mouse, but as I do that, you see one of them doesn't disappear. So this object, we're going to go down here and you'll see under viewport display in the object properties panel has wireframe on. We'll just turn that off. It's shaded smooth right now. It's not ready for that. I'm going to shade it flat. Generally when I'm working on something, I'll use flat shading, try to get the topology correct, and then I'll worry about the shading a little bit later on, perhaps. As long as the topo is good, your shading should be mostly good as well. And but if you want to turn it on or use auto smooth in the process, that's on you. All right, I'm just gonna leave it off for now. Another thing going on, this is personal. Grid floor, axes X and Y, I don't need them, and I'm gonna turn the grid off as well. So that way, when we're in ortho view, while we're orbiting, we hold Alt Z. We don't see no grid background. Basically, that's can kind of be distracting sometimes. So we got through all of that. Now we can actually start working on this thing. We're not going to focus on these right now. So I'm just going to press H and hide these after selecting them. And we can start working on this thing. Okay. First thing is first. Let's go ahead and press T, use the annotate tool real quick. So a lot of times your outer edges like this is a much bigger edge. This is the one that would need more segments, generally speaking. But when you're doing subdivision models, a lot of times they can match as well. But you can see here, there's a higher segment count here, all these edges, right? They're not matching, so they could be lowered perhaps, but I think in our case, matching is better. All that, having that many, not necessarily needed, but depends on the kind of workflow you're going with anyways. So this guy, what he's doing is something I would refer to as working with a mid-poly model first. It's kind of like creating the actual game object that you want to create, or the unoptimized model that you would want to take to high poly, but also maybe reduce it down a little bit into a low poly to match it to that high poly. Not mid poly game art necessarily. It's more of an old school like modeling technique, right? You create more of like a detailed model and then work it in both directions. And you would consider that mostly your block out for the most part. That's the main idea. Now, in this case, he's kind of got like block out mid poly and high, and then eventually we get to the low, but nothing wrong with that. That's how you do it. You'd work in collections like that. Just want to explain what's going on there. But now let's get into this. All of these edges aren't going to be needed. And so we can go through here and dissolve some of them and the ones that make the most sense. So I'm just going to control click through there and hit Control X real quick. I'm not worried about the back size because we're going to symmetrize things, so it's not a big issue just yet. Some things like this one, I try to dissolve it, doesn't work. Grab here, you can see what was that? Alt Z. There's an interior face in here. X, delete it, don't need it. Okay, I'm going to simplify this model, believe it or not, to just work it out a little bit faster. I'm going to take it. Grab these edges and Control X. We don't need that loop there. This one here, you can Alt click, right? You see how it does this? Control X, don't need it. Maybe on the back one too, just in case. I don't always want to get rid of things. Like I don't want to get rid of this vertex here, right? So I could just dissolve this edge because I don't want to get rid of this edge and I don't want to get rid of that edge. But I don't want that edge in the middle. So we'll get rid of it. Same for this one. Like I'll keep that edge. I just don't want to see that one for now. Same maybe for here, same for there. We'll figure all that out later on perhaps. I don't think we need this holding edge just yet. Okay, we're going to work things out first. This bottom one, Control X. Interior ones, Control X. Alt Shift click to select multiple loops, right? And you see it's all simplified now. So it's like going back to block out almost. You don't have to necessarily start over, but you can just kind of do a number like this if you need to. Now, in general, once again, that mid poly model, like if it's going to be like your unoptimized game asset or it's the model you're going to bake with, when you're baking high to low with subdivision, having a little bit of more density on the curves is really useful sometimes. So I don't know if I'd necessarily get rid of those, but if you were just doing pure subdivision, you could get rid of them, right? Kind of dissolve those ones out. Maybe leave it a little bit denser here on the side. Even that wouldn't hurt it, right? And then we can readjust all this later on if needed and do some things like that. Okay, and so as I'm looking at this, this here, I don't really want going to like this area. I'm imagining this being like a little like bevel in here. I'm going to want 3 segments, right? So this would be like an outer segment, inner segment, and that'll be the other outer segment, or maybe we add one in here. And for that reason, like I think it would be better if this here did not exist like that, but instead went over here. Okay. So I think that would be the better option. And maybe we loop cut there. We can move that around, and then we can move these around a little. I'm going to dissolve that edge for just a second, so I can move these around and balance them a little better. Okay, it's getting a little bit squirrely because our back faces are all the old topo. All right, so let's symmetrize it real quick. We're just going to do select it all, mesh, symmetrize. The arrows point in the positive direction, so in our case, it's negative y to positive y to go across in that direction. And then we do it again. You should be able to just hit Shift R, I think. No, maybe not. Symmetrize, and we're going to do positive X to negative X. So we got that going on. From here on out, I'm going to use Mesh Machine because it has the symmetrized gizmo, which you just kind of rotate and flick in the direction you want to go. Much easier. But yeah, now we can get in here. We want to balance things out where they're evenly spaced, unless we're doing like a holding edge, right? You can see here, that lines up like that. And we want to control this bevel here. And this one over here, you can see we're going to need to hold it sharper. So we can actually bring this in quite a bit. We can press K and C and cut through. And we can kind of pinch that area a little bit like that. And then readjust all these if needed. Now, if you're trying to line up to a model you already have, obviously you line up to the model you already have. If you're going to the reference image and lining up, then you could just kind of work through it like this and space them out a little bit more evenly perhaps, and just create a nice, like a nice little setup here of different, like the balance of the curve, like with the vertices. Create a nice little balance basically. Here we can do a KC. C's just to cut through the mesh. Found that Vulcan and the knife tool get a little bit squirrely sometimes with this new version of Blender, but for the most part, it works out just fine. I'm going to do a loop cut here. I'm going to KC through here. Okay. I think I'm going to need an edge right through here. At least one. It'd be nice to have 2, but we'll go with 1 for now. And you can see like we're missing the curve here. This is why I'm prepping for this area basically. Like if this is going to get cut at some point, we're going to shift all that around. And we're going to realign all this basically. We don't want big rectangles necessarily. Oh, we could even get away with like 2 loop cuts in here, perhaps, right? Something like that. And you can see I did it to the backside, and I'll try to work on the backside. So yeah, be careful with that too. In our case, I'm trying to think of how I want to run this topo around. I think this is going to work fine. Something like that. Got this extra edge out here though. Could we get away with doing something like that? With a triangle? It is possible to use triangles. It's not the end of the world to use them. It's not ideal maybe. If we want to just cut out another edge, we'll solve that triangle problem real quick. So Alt-Z to select through the mesh. Kind of balance this area out a little bit. And a lot of times, you know, doing the curves, you can construct these things manually on these lower poly meshes. It's not that big of a deal. And subdivision should be easy to control in general, but it's easier said than done sometimes. But the main idea is that the base form should be still relatively low poly. You can see as I work all this out now, we're going to get something like this. Not ready to actually use the subdivision yet, but we're getting there. I'm going to pull this one out a little this way. Yeah, we could probably balance this much better. But for now, I think that's good. Top section here. A little tricky on this one. You notice I already did a reduction on the edges. So I'm trying to connect these. Just select 2 verts, hit J. This is going to go up here somewhere maybe. Get a little squirrely right here. You'll have things like that happen. It's normal. I think what I'll do is I'll add a edge here. I'll go back and I'll try to balance this a little better. It's going to be slightly denser in that area, but it won't be so bad that it's like super noticeable at least. Okay, now you can see it's getting a little squirrely here. That one would have to go there, and then these 2 would connect here. We end up with this situation where it's I really want a center edge here. And it isn't happening right now. I'm going to dissolve that edge so that way we can do a loop cut and it doesn't cut across the shape yet. I think what I'm going to do for these guys is we're going to use the edge flow add-on. Super useful add-on for stuff like this where we need to create better spacing and still preserve the curve. So that's what we're going to do. Set flow. You got to be an edge select for it, but set flow, boom. And it might mess your shape up a little bit. It happens. You can see it doesn't always get everything perfect, but we can definitely, we're in a better position now, I think, even if we were to go back and readjust it a little. It's definitely going to be a little bit nicer, I think. The spacing especially. But yeah, there you go. Right here, kind of want to increase the resolution, but I'll try not to anyways. So now we get this like really awkward kind of like area. Not, you know, it'll probably be okay, right? And that was so that this center point exists. We can go across the center and these will become quads like this. Now, sometimes this causes like weird topology, like a topology issue anyways. I'm going to select all that and control exit. Instead of like, we still have the center cut, but instead of like doing them across from here, we can do them across from here and then cut these ones. And so we can split this whole section. Hold shift and click and drag. You'll cut center points, right? Right click, hold shift, cut and drag. You can see I created extra vert by accident. Dissolve it, boom. All right, but now those quads are out here and they got 2 in the middle. It just works out a little bit nicer. So we can do that. If you want to balance this even more, what we can do is control shift click through here. We can now do a shortest path selection with fill region. Quads work well with that. So, but we can grab this and we can hit shift H, go into sculpt mode. So control tab, sculpt mode. all of our new sculpting tools, but we have an old one here, which is relax slide. I want to do auto mask and I want to do mesh boundary. Even though we just hid the mesh, this is our new mesh boundary basically. And with slide relax, normally you can grab and move geometry around or the vertices or whatever, but you can hold shift and it'll just do like a regular relax. So we can actually kind of evenly space these out a little bit better. And we don't have to eyeball it necessarily. On a flat face, this works really well. Even on curved surfaces, it doesn't work bad. So we can just Alt H, bring everything back, go back into edit mode, and we'll have that set up, right? It's starting to look pretty good, right? It's not too bad. Now, a couple things in here I want to do still. I'm going to Control X right there. And we could Control X these as well. You can see that triangle finishing out. We can't do that. But, oh, let's symmetrize first. Let's make sure it's all good to go. And then we'll go and we'll work those back real quick, including that center one there. So we don't have none of those symmetry lines. All right, that's good. Now, we're going to use weighted bevels to do this because if we add a bevel modifier, right, what we'll find is that bevel modifiers work okay usually. You can see we can change outer emitter to arc. It'll fix this little section. And we'll get something like that. We can change the values here to whatever we think works best. You can see it's very sensitive. This is at scale, so it should be the appropriate size, right? We're working in millimeters, and Blender doesn't like working in millimeters. Usually you can set like scene settings, millimeters right there. But anyways, so if we hold shift and drag, it's going to move every 1-2 millimeters or every millimeter, right? Sometimes you got to enter values like 0.5. You can see this is going to mostly work out here actually, but it's kind of bevel in this corner, which I didn't really want it to do. And we would use like 2 segments, profile of 1, and we end up with something like this. This would still, for the most part, work, except it's doing bevels in places where I don't want it to. And if we adjust the angle amount, that's a 90-degree angle, so like that doesn't help us much. We need to use, if we're going to do this non-destructively at least, which is what I'm showing you, we're going to use weighted bevels. But you can see we would do bevel, then subdivision, turn it on, and change the amount to in the viewport. This still works okay though. Shade it smooth. But the edge, this corner just doesn't quite work out the way we want. Okay. But other than that, I mean, it's pretty good. And there's a few improvements we can make still. So let's turn subdivision off again just for a moment. Go into edit mode. Turn the bevel off too. And what we want to do is select the edges we want to bevel. So I'm going to select these. You can Alt Shift click, or excuse me, Alt click it. You don't have to Alt Shift. And select these. Okay. And then Alt Shift click here. Select loops, boundary loops. Okay. If you're using machine tools, it's just tap 2. Or set up a shortcut for it, which I do. And so there you go. Under the end panel, you'll see mean bevel weight. Change it to 1. Okay. And then hold Control, select through there. Change it to 1. These are the bevels we want to create. We don't want to bevel this corner necessarily because we already manually did it basically. And we'll be going there. So when we do this, and it bevels, we get this kind of setup here. Okay, it's not right yet. And you wouldn't know this unless you've gone through this before. Some of it's not right yet. Well, obviously, the bevel itself is still using angle. We need to set it to weight. But even then, it's still not quite right. And you might try loop slide on and off too. It might you might get a little bit better results with it off. Okay. You can see here, this is what we're trying to do. Okay, off's better. We're trying to create this little quad right here. If you do have clipping issues though, you can change this. I'll change it to 1. You can change the end distance to make it closer. So, oop, not 500 millimeter maybe. What's the default for that? What was that? It was extremely large, right? You can always do like math in here, like divide by 2, right? See, done. All right, so, but we want this quad. That's important. This up here, we want to be a triquad at some point. So that loop actually goes in there now, right? We'll get that result. That can stay like that, or you can add a loop in it, whatever, it doesn't matter. There you go. So, but here's the trick. This is very soft, and most blades have, you know, like they're grinded or whatever, sharpened up, and they have a little angle there. So we can do a bevel weight on this as well. But when we do that, it flattens, like we get that little edge look that we want. But it kind of flattens out the curve here as well. We don't want that. So we're gonna have to go destructive at some point with that bevel to fix things like that. And sometimes you might end up with like a triangle or something. Like if this was connected, for example, through here, it won't do correct either, especially with the subdivision. It would start to look wrong. For whatever reason, it's not doing it, but whatever. All right, so let's apply the bevel. At that point, the bevel weights no longer matter. You can just get rid of them. Now there's a really, I want to mention this before we go any further. When you have an edge like this, and it's a really small object, and you use symmetrize, you could destroy it. Very, very tricky thing depending on the size of your object. Symmetrize is not as accurate as you think it is. And at some point, it doesn't matter if it's blenders symmetrize or mesh machines. It does not matter. What does matter though, like what is going on down here actually? Did we already mess up? I hope we did not. It might be crossing each other already. Yeah, you see like it's very narrow. But yeah, I think I had messed it up, and then we Control Z back. It might have fixed it. We want to select that one, come over to the other side, and hit Control. Select that one. We want to move this out a little bit. And then if we don't want to resymmetrize, which I don't want to, so we don't have to dissolve a bunch of stuff and whatnot, if we symmetrize, it may or may not work, first of all. But otherwise, we'll have to go through and dissolve that, maybe dissolve other edges. A lot of times, we'll just go with this anyways. So you just move it out. You make it thicker, basically. That's the main thing. Now we'll be okay. Okay. So we get this result. It subdivides now. We can change the resolution to a little bit higher, perhaps like 3. Make sure subdivision's on. Very sharp little pinch point in here. Maybe not even quite right. Like you could probably round it out a little bit. That wouldn't hurt. But I feel like there's something else going on right now. Yeah, it's like an internal face or something going here. Okay, yeah. So there's a little internal face. I knew something was wrong looking there. You can barely even see it. The symmetrize didn't work right or something. Let's select there to there. X, delete those vertices. A, M, merge by distance. Turn distance merge all the way down. Otherwise, you can accidentally collapse those two. Yeah, so very tricky. Be careful. Don't mess that up. As it's really a pain to repair. It's not impossible, but it's just a pain. And then, right. So now we have that subdivision mesh. Pretty much the way we want, but we still have that sharp section. These we can bring down. You see they change shape. Press E and then hit F and try to keep it flat. and it's going to be even with that top edge basically. So we go through there, G twice, hit E, F as needed, and just space them out a bit, and it'll correct the curvature. It's pretty hard to get these ones just right. Like it doesn't, it doesn't really happen. But like halfway point would be good if you could get there. And you might have to adjust the positioning a little bit, but try not to mess it up too bad. So with any luck, we should be able to symmetrize left to right still, no problem. And these won't have any issue in the middle, hopefully. Turn subdivision off in edit mode. Or turn subdivision on in edit mode and turn it on with end result. And remember, it's not that when you're creating a subdivision model, your actual model that you're working on is the cage or the control mesh. The subdivision result, when you actually apply the subdivision, you actually subdivide it, that is the model, right? That's the model you're creating. So you turn on end result sometimes, and you can go through and check it and tweak it and adjust it. Because you can see we're close to matching the image. It doesn't have to be perfect necessarily, but oftentimes it can be very useful to go back through and just very carefully tweak things. It's very easy to accidentally create lumpy surfaces. Hold shift while doing that, and it'll just come out nicer, basically. And because we're working in this kind of very methodical manner now with this like final result here, that's kind of how it goes, right? Like we can make it happen, basically. Strangely enough, if we were to take this whole model, get rid of the subdivision, and dissolve a few key edges here that are some of the last ones we've worked on. A lot of this can be limited to dissolved at 0.05. You can see we get topo like this going. We can work it back into a low poly is what I'm trying to get at here. Shade it auto smooth. So a lot of this stuff in here may not even be needed actually. Let's just use a C in the cursor selector with face select. So you switch to face, use C, Control X, all that. You might be able to get rid of all that like that. And you can work it backwards is what I'm getting at. This is why a lot of guys really like working with subdivision right here, because it's very easy to kind of create that denser mesh and then create a high poly and then work the high poly back to a low poly or use that initial mesh as well. Which one are we looking at here? It's the, okay. You can do it in little sections too. It doesn't have to all be done at one time or nothing. And you can also like segment it up as well into n-gons, so that hopefully it would just triangulate a little bit better later on when you're creating the actual low poly mesh and optimizing it and all that. Like this here, we don't need that kind of edge anymore. We don't need that one. We don't need that one necessarily. I feel like that's going all the way around the model. It's not. Okay. You can see these ones are just causing problems right now. I don't want to dissolve that, so get rid of those. I don't even need to be working on the backside. And voila. I'm doing a quick low poly just to give you a quick tip. What did it just symmetrize? Why did it do that? Okay. So the low poly is going to be interesting. These should be flat, first of all. For whatever reason, they ended up not flat. I don't know what happened there. But they need to match the high poly as well. So if you need additional faces, you need additional faces. But I don't think that's optimal right there at all to have those like that. So I'm going to just get rid of them. And I'm going to pull these ones out. It should still bake okay-ish, but I think there's a slight shape change in that curve. Anyways, I think we'll be all right. As long as it's split up kind of evenly like you're doing quads still, right? These will be non-planar faces technically, but they're not too noticeable anyways, right? So later on, this gets triangulated. Keep normals, shade auto smooth, even weighted if you need to, but you can see how this can work out anyways. We can get a really nice optimal mesh out of it. Something like that for now. So the low poly in this would align, right? So Alt A, oh, grab this one, then this one, Alt A with machine tools, or actually transform, align objects. As long as they have the same origin point, you can hold Shift and select X and Y and align them that way as well. Now, your low poly, you'll UV map it and unwrap it and all that, right? Get ready to bake. But the problem we're going to find is that sometimes it's hard to see them both. / here the background there. So our subdivision mesh is really good and our low poly matches it very well. But one of the issues we will find that happens is that you see how these edges kind of overextend the high poly. When you bake, this is going to create like a really dark spot here. This is what happens. So the very tip of the edge when you bake, push the low poly inside of the high poly. Or you can just, take the high poly and if your model, like if your low poly is already UV unwrapped and everything, just you can do one or the other. So, take the high poly and push it over the side of the low poly if you need to. But in our case, since we haven't unwrapped yet, we could just go through and tweak this. We could symmetrize it still and all that other fun stuff too. But I'm just going to push them in slightly like this. You'll get a better bake out of it usually. You just don't want them getting a ray miss there, basically. And so that's what you need, right? That should bake out just fine now. And you'll do the rest of the model. Okay. You got all this other fun stuff to work on. This area, you could potentially make it from the high poly, right? Topo you already have over there. It's actually kind of easy. So let me hide that idea of the low real quick. Let me just tag that as LP so I remember. And then like this topo here for the high poly. We could borrow this. We could duplicate it, separate it, pull it out, and then we can just do this area here, / to isolate it. We just want to connect these areas up more or less, right? So let's just knife cut it. I can get the knife cut to work. And make sure they merge. Delete all that. We don't need all those edges, so judgment call on which ones you get rid of, but / can rebalance these a little. So it doesn't create a little pinching point on this supposed to be round piece, right? And there you go. So like it's just a plane right now, but all the topo's there. And we can symmetrize it if needed. So we grab it and extrude it. Add a loop cut, bevel, subdivide, right? Done. That's all you got to do there. Little section in here like this maybe. You might get away with a loop tools circle. Place that, scale it. A little bit of a stretch here to do it like this, but you might get away with it. Who knows? Inset, hold control. Grab that, boundary select, control B. Mouse wheel up once, profile 1, segment 2. And there you go. So if we got to do that pushed in section first, grab this. Use machine tools, hit 4, it separates the mesh. It's the same as duplicating, separating, and then all that fun stuff, right? But this one we could just extrude, right? Boundary select, bevel, mouse wheel up once, done. Subdivide, okay? If it has a back face, you don't necessarily need it because you're not going to see it. Delete it. You don't have to worry about anything in there for the most part. So we can do something like that very fast. That was supposed to be that little rivet or whatever you want to call it. And select that, Shift G, select coplanar. Oops, almost had it. Right. So we can do high polys like this all day. You see the old ones are on the other side apparently. Whoops. And that's okay. We mirror these. So we use a mirror modifier before the subdivision. Your blade here, the origin point was at the center, right? So this mirror, select object, the blade, it's now on the other side, hopefully. If not, change the direction, in our case, Y. This can be also mirrored using machine tools. Click, Alt Shift X, boom. Take this one. It's already set the blade high. Hit Y, we'll have it on the other side potentially, right? Yeah, so very quick way of doing things. You don't have to always do it all destructive right off the bat. Like you can test your bevels first, basically. With weighted bevels, you can work it to this point. Maybe this is too strong. I mean, you can space these out more so it becomes more rounded, obviously. That's a possibility. You can GG twice this. You see? And then you can hit E and F. Make it even. Maybe rework these areas a little. Get them going in the same direction. So then I'll start to round that out a little. Maybe get rid of these. Just add one down the middle. That'll make it way more rounded, right? It's going to pull towards that center now. And I have to symmetrize that. So there we go. And it's a pretty clean high poly, right? Like it's not too bad. So all we got to do is make the low poly that matches. And honestly, the low poly for this, you might do the handle and the blade kind of combined so that you don't have to create like this interior piece as a separate object maybe. And you should be able to get it to bake out if you're very careful with the alignment and whatnot. It'll still be fairly dense too. So don't, you know, go a little bit more, I think, with the edges than you probably think you would need. So it gets a good bake anyways. But yeah, so that's modeling of said knife, right? Oh, and because we're able to work on this destructively right now, I know the subdivision's in the way. We could try to tighten these up a little bit more, but also just another like loop cut in this area could potentially help out. Kind of hard to do though right now. Let's just do K and C, cut through. Okay, that didn't work. KC. I can't do the drag cut apparently. Okay, so KC, and we'll just cut in this area. That's just going to tighten up the edges. I was going for more of a center cut, but in this one we can loop cut. So that's going to tighten that up even more, so it'll be a little bit sharper. Density helps solve a lot of problems that you might run into. Also, like this area gets too soft on the edge there. We could probably pull those back in if we needed to. Just a little bit. It's going to cause a distortion on the edge itself, but it won't be the end of the world, right? To do that, a different matte cap might help you see how good or bad that reflection is. Maybe the metallic one or something like that, right? Car paint, something like that. Very subtle. I think it could be thicker, personally. Like where we push out that chamfer. But ultimately, it's good enough. It's good enough for this video. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the modeling of this thing, and I'll check you out next one. Take care.